In the middle of the sun-scorched Arizona desert lies a seemingly forgotten treasure trove of air power history, the largest collection of retired military aircraft on the planet. More than 4,000 aircraft rest quietly across 2,600 acres at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, nestled just outside Tucson. This vast airfield, known officially as the 309th Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Group, or AMARG, is more than a desert boneyard. But AMARG didn't appear out of nowhere. Its story begins at the end of the Second World War, when the United States suddenly found itself with more airplanes than it could ever hope to use. Thousands of B-29 Super Fortresses, C-47 transports, and training aircraft were returning from combat theaters across Europe and the Pacific. Production lines had been operating at full tilt, turning out aircraft faster than pilots could be trained to fly them. And once the war ended, the US military faced a new problem. What do you do with an air force built for a global conflict that had already passed? In 1946, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base was chosen as the solution. Its remote location, vast open land, and exceptionally dry climate made it the perfect place to store aircraft long-term. What began as a temporary holding area for surplus B-29s quickly evolved into a critical Cold War asset. When tensions with the Soviet Union escalated, many of those stored bombers were preserved, not scrapped, because no one knew how quickly the geopolitical landscape might shift again. By the 1950s and 60s, the site had expanded dramatically. Jet-powered aircraft replaced the older props, and row after row of F-86 Sabres, B-47 Stratojets, and KC-97 tankers filled the desert floor. As the Cold War accelerated, AMARG became a strategic insurance policy. Aircraft weren't just stored, they were preserved with the assumption that one day they might be needed again. Out of this necessity, the modern version of AMARG was born. In 1964, the facility was formally reorganized into what would eventually become the 309th Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Group. From that point forward, its mission expanded beyond simple storage. AMARG became a center for large-scale preservation, parts reclamation, demilitarization, and regeneration of aircraft for both US forces and allied nations around the world. Over the decades, as new wars arose and old fleets retired, the base transformed into a living timeline of American air power. Each row representing a different era of military aviation and national strategy. It's a living archive of American aviation might, stretching from Cold War B-52 Stratofortresses to the beloved F-14 Tomcat and the battle-tested A-10 Warthog that flew countless missions in Iraq and Afghanistan. To the casual observer, this sea of wings and fuselages might look like the end of the line, a graveyard of machines left to decay under the desert sun. But the reality is far more complex and strategic. This $35 billion collection isn't abandoned or forgotten. It's a meticulously organized inventory of military readiness. Each aircraft stored here represents decades of engineering, millions in investment, and thousands of flight hours in the defense of US interests. These planes are not just relics, they are assets, stored and preserved for regeneration, parts harvesting, foreign military sales, or emergency wartime deployment. Today we're going behind the scenes to uncover why these aircraft are stored here, what makes Arizona the ideal location for long-term preservation, and how AMARG serves as one of the most quietly powerful military capabilities in the United States arsenal. From corrosion prevention to parts reclamation, from regeneration of bombers to maintaining a strategic, but AMARG didn't appear out of nowhere. Its story begins at the end of the Second World War, when the United States suddenly found itself with more airplanes than it could ever hope to use. Thousands of B-29 Super Fortresses, C-47 transports, and training aircraft were returning from combat theaters across Europe and the Pacific. Production lines had been operating at full tilt, turning out aircraft faster than pilots could be trained to fly them. And once the war ended, the US military faced a new problem. What do you do with an air force built for a global conflict that had already passed? In 1946, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base was chosen as the solution. Its remote location, vast open land, and exceptionally dry climate made it the perfect place to store aircraft long-term. What began as a temporary holding area for surplus B-29s quickly evolved into a critical Cold War asset. When tensions with the Soviet Union escalated, many of those stored bombers were preserved, not scrapped, because no one knew how quickly the geopolitical landscape might shift again. By the 1950s and 60s, the site had expanded dramatically. Jet-powered aircraft replaced the older props, and row after row of F-86 Sabres, B-47 Stratojets, and KC-97 tankers filled the desert floor. As the Cold War accelerated, AMARG became a strategic insurance policy. Aircraft weren't just stored, they were preserved with the assumption that one day they might be needed again. Out of this necessity, the modern version of AMARG was born. In 1964, the facility was formally reorganized into what would eventually become the 309th Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Group. From that point forward, its mission expanded beyond simple storage. AMARG became a center for large-scale preservation, parts reclamation, demilitarization, and regeneration of aircraft for both US forces and allied nations around the world. Over the decades, as new wars arose and old fleets retired, the base transformed into a living timeline of American air power, each row representing a different era of military aviation and national strategy. Reserve AMARG isn't just a scrapyard, it's a cornerstone of American air dominance. Why Arizona? That's the first question most people ask when they see rows of aircraft stretching into the desert horizon. Why choose this sun-scorched landscape to preserve billions in national defense hardware? The answer lies in a combination of nature and engineering foresight. The Sonoran Desert isn't just remote and vast. It offers one of the best natural environments on Earth for storing complex metal airframes. With average humidity levels consistently below 30%, rainfall totaling less than 12 inches annually, and alkaline soil that resists corrosion, this desert acts as a preservation chamber. In more humid regions, moisture penetrates seams, corrodes avionics, and degrades aluminum in months. But here in Arizona, the same airframes can sit idle for decades with only minimal deterioration. Then there's temperature stability. While the desert can be blisteringly hot during the day, it avoids the destructive freeze-thaw cycles common in temperate climates. Those cycles expand and contract aircraft seals, warp structural elements, and accelerate cracking in hydraulic lines and fuel systems. Without freezing, those systems remain largely intact, ready to be restored when needed. The soil composition also plays a crucial role. Unlike acidic ground that eats away at exposed metal, the firm desert hardpan provides solid support without requiring expensive concrete ramps. It's dry, durable, and allows crews to park heavy bombers and fighters directly on compacted earth without fear of long-term damage. But AMARG isn't just about where planes go to rest. It's a fully functioning facility with a sophisticated classification system and precise mission. The aircraft stored here aren't simply mothballed. They're strategically sorted into one of 4 categories, each with a distinct purpose. Type 1000 aircraft are preserved for the long haul. These jets are kept in near flight-ready condition, with engines protected, systems flushed and sealed, and critical electronics monitored. These are America's strategic reserve, assets that can be regenerated and returned to flight within months if needed for future contingencies. Type 2000 aircraft are designated as parts donors. They'll never fly again, but they're invaluable to keeping the rest of the active fleet in the air. As aircraft age and replacement parts become harder to source or manufacture, these donor airframes become a goldmine, allowing technicians to harvest everything from avionics modules to structural components. A single retired F-16, for instance, might keep 5 others flying for years. Type 3000 aircraft are held in short-term storage, usually awaiting a specific decision: reactivation, transfer, or refurbishment. These planes may be waiting for reassignment to allied nations, used in future exercises, or returned to service after brief downtimes. Type 4000 aircraft are tagged for disposal, but even here, the process is far from simple. Before scrapping, each aircraft goes through a rigorous decommissioning protocol. Sensitive technologies are removed or destroyed, and valuable materials are reclaimed for recycling. Nothing is wasted, nothing is left to chance. Preserving a high-performance jet for storage isn't as simple as parking it and walking away. It's a science. AMARG technicians follow detailed protocols to ensure that each aircraft, regardless of its classification, is protected from time and the elements. Cockpit windows and sensitive sensors are sealed using a proprietary spray-on polymer called Spraylat. This bright white coating reflects UV radiation, shields delicate instruments, and prevents sun bleaching and sand erosion. Engine inlets and exhausts are covered with fitted caps to keep birds, insects and debris from entering. Even a small foreign object can cause catastrophic damage if an engine is spun up later. Fuel tanks and hydraulic systems are completely flushed and then filled with special compounds that inhibit corrosion and maintain internal cleanliness. Tires are slightly overinflated and rotated periodically to prevent flat spotting. Flight control surfaces are physically locked into place to avoid damage from desert winds. Even seemingly minor details, like how often a plane is moved or how its landing gear is supported, are carefully tracked and documented. And the process doesn't stop after initial preparation. AMARG teams perform periodic inspections and light maintenance on long-term storage aircraft. Every few years, planes are unwrapped, checked for structural integrity, and then resealed. It's this blend of passive storage and active monitoring that allows aircraft to be brought back to life with minimal surprises, even after decades in the desert. Aircraft recovery at AMARG happens far more often than most people realize. While rows of weathered jets might appear forgotten under the desert sun, many are far from being permanent relics. Regenerating an aircraft from long-term storage is a complex process, but compared to designing and manufacturing a brand new fighter or bomber, it's both dramatically faster and significantly more cost-effective. During the Gulf War, for example, several B-52 Stratofortresses were pulled directly from AMARG, given new life through rapid refurbishment, and deployed into active combat within months. These weren't museum pieces, they became operational warplanes again. This process continued into the 21st century. In 2021, two B-1B bombers, Lancelot and Rogue, were regenerated after spending years in storage. The overhaul was extensive. Technicians removed their engines, performed full teardown inspections, replaced degraded components, reassembled and tested them, then reinstalled the engines back into the aircraft. Avionics systems were upgraded to meet modern standards. Every square inch of the fuselage was inspected for corrosion, repaired, and sealed. Flight surfaces were balanced and realigned. Hydraulics were flushed, fuel systems checked for leaks, and control systems recalibrated. On average, it takes about 9,000 man-hours of expert labor to bring one dormant aircraft back to mission-ready status. But the result is an airframe fully restored to frontline combat capability, for a fraction of the cost and time required to build new aircraft from scratch. And that's just the regeneration side. Arguably even more valuable is AMARG's role in parts reclamation. Each year, AMARG salvages and returns over $500 million worth of components to the Department of Defense. These parts aren't just pulled at random, they're meticulously cataloged, removed with precision, tested, and then recertified to meet airworthiness standards. This ensures they're ready for integration into active duty aircraft. Many of these components come from aircraft no longer in service, like the legendary F-14 Tomcat. Though retired in 2006, F-14S stored at AMARG still provide vital parts, engines, actuators, avionics modules, and more that are compatible with legacy aircraft still flying today. When original manufacturers have shuttered their production lines or tooling has been lost, AMARG fills a critical gap. The logistics chains for many older platforms would otherwise collapse, grounding squadrons simply for lack of parts. Instead, thanks to AMARG, even jets built decades ago can remain mission-ready with high-quality spares that arrive in days, not months. The facility plays another crucial role as a strategic reserve. In times of conflict or national emergency, the US military can tap into this fleet to rapidly expand air power. Unlike waiting years for new aircraft from production lines, AMARG can bring fighters, bombers, transports, and support aircraft back online in a matter of months. This surge capacity ensures that when the demand spikes, the supply of airframes won't be the limiting factor. Even foreign military allies benefit from AMARG's deep bench. When a nation signs a deal to acquire US fighter jets, like the F-16, it's often faster and more cost-efficient to provide a regenerated airframe from AMARG than to wait for a new build. These aircraft are modernized and reconditioned to meet the buyer's specifications and offer the same performance as brand new units. It's a win-win. The purchasing country gets capable hardware faster, and the US avoids the lengthy backlog of new production slots. In essence, AMARG isn't just a place where planes go to die, it's where many return to life. It's where the past meets the future of air power, and where military readiness is preserved not in cutting-edge factories, but in the quiet efficiency of a desert-based logistics marvel. Environmental and strategic efficiency isn't just a side benefit at AMARG, It's one of the reasons the place exists at all. If every airbase across the country handled its own aircraft retirement, the system would be a mess. You'd have different standards, inconsistent procedures, varying levels of security, and a whole lot of environmental risk. Fuel residues, hydraulic fluids, classified avionics, those aren't something you want spread across dozens of scattered facilities. Centralizing everything in one secure, tightly controlled location changes the equation completely. At AMARG, nothing happens by chance. Hazardous materials are drained, neutralized, and stored by teams who do this job every single day. Classified components are removed behind locked doors, logged into federal databases, and treated like the sensitive technology they are. Even the recycling process is strategic. Titanium, aluminum alloys, high-strength steels, everything that can be reused is reused. A MARG doesn't just store jets, it extracts value from them piece by piece while ensuring nothing dangerous slips out. And then there's the other side of the operation, controlled dismantling. Outdated platforms don't just vanish, they're taken apart slowly, surgically, under protocols designed to prevent a single bolt from ending up in the wrong place. If it looks like a graveyard from the outside, it's actually more like an industrial lab, one that happens to be spread across thousands of aircraft. But what people almost never see is the human element. More than 1,000 civilians and contractors keep AMARG running, not just as a storage site, but as an aviation ecosystem. Many of them are veterans. Some spent 20 or 30 years maintaining B-52s, F-16, KC-135s, and now they're the same people tasked with preserving or resurrecting those aircraft decades later. When a B-1B Lancer is selected for regeneration, it's not uncommon for someone on the team to recognize the jet. They know its quirks, its maintenance scars, the personality every airframe develops over time. That experience isn't written in any manual. It's earned through long nights on noisy flight lines, through deployments, through a lifetime spent around machines that most people will never touch. This human capital is AMARG's hidden advantage. The desert preserves the metal, but the people preserve the knowledge. Viewed from the sky, AMARG looks like the end of the story. Rows and rows of aircraft fading under the Arizona sun. But up close, it's the opposite. It's a controlled environment where the past, present, and future of American air power coexist. A place where jets wait not just for retirement, but sometimes for a second chance. And when that moment comes, it's the men and women who know these machines better than anyone who bring them back to life. So why does the US store 4,000 airplanes in the desert? Because it isn't just storage, it's strategy, it's economics, it's environmental responsibility on a scale no other military can match. These aircraft aren't discarded trophies of past wars, they're preserved assets, frozen in time, maintained in a state where they can be tapped like a multi-billion-dollar reserve fleet. In an era defined by rapid global deployments, tightening budgets, and painfully long production timelines for modern aircraft, AMARG functions as the pressure valve that keeps US air power flexible. Inside those silent rows of metal is capability, locked, cataloged, and ready. Some jets will be donors, keeping frontline squadrons alive when parts are scarce. Others will be regenerated, pulled from the desert after years of inactivity, re-inspected, rewired, rearmed. And a few, the ones the Pentagon still sees value in, will return to service so quickly that most people won't even notice they were gone. That's the brilliance of AMARG. It turns time into an asset. It's easy to look at the aerial photos, the endless white lines stretching across the desert floor, and assume the story is over for these aircraft. But that's the illusion. In reality, those rows represent potential energy, dormant strength waiting for the right moment. If a major conflict erupted tomorrow and the Pentagon needed an immediate surge in air power, those so-called relics could be the first to move, the first to fly, the first to fill the gaps while factories scramble to catch up. A MARG is, in many ways, a quiet masterpiece of military logistics, a place where the US turns what appears to be abandonment into a strategic advantage, a facility that transforms old fighters, bombers, tankers, and transports into one of the most effective reserve systems on the planet. It's not glamorous, it doesn't roar like an active base, but without it, American air power would be slower, weaker, and far more expensive. What looks like a graveyard is actually a vault, one of the most valuable, efficient, and underestimated assets in modern defense planning.